Hello, welcome to today's edition of Womanhood. I am Lady T.
And I am Tanya Nicole.
And here we are today, another tech issue day. For some reason, I'm showing up as blue on our screen.
Oh, no.
I don't know why. But anyway, I'll be blue today.
All right.
Okay, so welcome everyone to today's edition of Womanhood. Our topic for today will be all about boundaries. Yes. What are they? Why is this important? And what can you do about it? Okay.
Absolutely. Boundaries are a part of our self-love series that we have. And I know a lot of you may be wondering, what does boundaries have to do with self-love? And I've been learning a lot through this self-love series, and you'll realize after today's discussion, and we might have to extend it because boundaries is a catalyst for understanding what self-love really is. I know for myself personally, I'm recently learning about this concept of boundaries. I'm sure that there are many of you out there that probably are like, boundaries? What is it? What does it look like? You know, how do I set them? So hopefully our intention for today's show is for you to be open to listening and learning about what boundaries are. So maybe it can help you love yourself a little more than you do today.
Absolutely. Having boundaries is something I was not aware of until, I don't know, maybe mid-30s, going into my latter 30s. And it was something I definitely did not have, and something I put a lot of work into to have, and still working at it, because as you continue and find yourself in different situations in life, that's kind of when you realize, oh, hold on, don't have a boundary for this, need to put one in. So it's an ongoing journey, and it's a great journey once you establish what your boundaries are. So really excited about this topic today.
Absolutely. Technical question at this time. Are you hearing feedback and echo?
I am. I asked Son of Man if he was, and he said no.
Okay. So just want to make sure that our audience is hearing as clearly as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have two wonderful guests coming on our show today. One of our guests, her name is Anissa Hannah. She's a professional model, lover of skincare, and an entrepreneur. She has been in the fashion and beauty industry for over 15 years. And in her personal time, she enjoys crafting, handmade jewelry, running, and having a good old laugh. I'm really excited to have her with us today. She's going to be sharing some of her stories as it pertains to boundaries, and her experiences with them, and how she was able to change, identify them, and live a more free life because she was able to actually start saying no instead of always saying yes.
Great.
Another guest we have is Krista Courtenay. She's a professional counselor, specializes in areas that cover a broad spectrum of life. She has counseled with individuals, couples, families, and groups in psychotherapy for more than 10 years. And full disclosure, she probably doesn't know this, but she was the first person that brought to my attention that I needed some boundaries. So I'm very happy to have both of our guests on our show today. Welcome, ladies.
Welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Right, so
I am so happy to be here.
We're happy to have you.
All right. I guess I'll ask Krista. Krista, what are boundaries and why are they important?
So as I was listening to Anissa, there were a couple things that really stuck out. And as a therapist, when I work with clients, one of the hardest things sometimes is helping them to understand that boundaries do need to be stated. But boundaries actually are kind of a property line that you put around yourself. And so when you see a house with a fence, you clearly know where the property line is for that person. But when we have to do that emotionally or spiritually or in our professional lives, you don't walk around with a fence around you. So it can become, a little difficult sometimes to really understand where your boundaries need to be when they're being challenged or disrespected, and how to defend them in a particular way. And so when Anissa was talking, she didn't know until she felt. And sometimes when we go through things in life, we're kind of taught to disregard what we feel. Don't make a scene. Don't make anybody uncomfortable. Don't be rude.
Yes.
And so we don't know how to navigate those situations because we're feeling. And if it's enough, it can cut off our ability to really think about what we need to say in that moment or how we need to handle it. So boundaries really are about getting in touch with yourself, because you have to determine where those boundaries need to be. And sometimes you don't know until you feel it.
Right. And that's why boundaries is so important in order. When we speak of the concept of self-love, right? So if you don't have clear boundaries, how can you really love yourself to the full extent when people are constantly maybe taking advantage of you and you're just like, this just doesn't feel right, but I don't have the words, And I think Lady T and I spoke about it early. When we're kids, we're not taught about boundaries. We're taught, especially in certain cultures, only speak when you're spoken to, right? Don't talk. Let me talk. What you say is not important to me. Hush your mouth. You listen to me. And we get those messages so young that when we get older and in relationships and work and everything else, we have that thing where, wait a minute, maybe my thoughts aren't that important. Maybe what I'm feeling isn't that important. So you know what? I guess I'll just take the BS that I'm getting from my boyfriend right now, or, or any other.
And if you really think about it, it's not that we were taught this because, they were doing something wrong.
Exactly.
A lot of times parents are parenting because they want better for their kids.
Absolutely.
And when they want certain outcomes, they certainly want something different sometimes than what they got. Or sometimes they want exactly what they got as a child. But we're taught certain things for a reason. But parents, a lot of times, and teachers, most of the adults in children's lives, don't feel comfortable. They feel like they're going to lose control somehow. If I let you talk back to me, you're going to overstep and go too far. So it's like, let me keep you in a place where I feel like I can keep you safe. So if you're listening to me and you're not questioning anything that I say, I can keep you safe. I can control your environment. I can control where you go and what you do, and I can keep you safe. And it's a very fear-based position to be in, which is why they say the best thing you do for your kids is to go to therapy. Because the more you deal with your own stuff, it's a lot easier and you feel a lot less threatened.
Yes.
When then you can listen to your child and say, how did you feel about that? Or they can say, no, my mom, I really don't want to hug Uncle so-and-so because I feel uncomfortable with that. Because how many times did you walk into a room as a child? It's like, okay, go kiss your grandma, go hug your auntie.
Yeah.
And you have to hug everybody because you have to be, nice. Don't be rude. Don't embarrass me.
You have to be nice. You have to be respectful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so less and less of that is just accepted these days. I mean, we're having a lot bigger conversations and understanding that underneath all of that, what you're trying to achieve is one thing, but what you're actually achieving sometimes is something very different.
I see it resonating with you, Anissa. I see you're like shaking your head and the body language is going.
I said, do not get, because I'm dramatic. I said, don't get dramatic, Anissa. Don't get dramatic. Just shake your head. Just shake your head. He said is I did not see how important therapy was until I became a mother. And when I was married to my ex-husband, and I had, my first son, it was a lot of drama. My first son, when a situation had happened, I'll get in details later, but a situation had happened where that literally woke me up. I said, oh my goodness. And it forced me into therapy. It's like I had a choice. You either stay this way and you lose your children, or you get your act together. So it was painful, but that was actually a blessing to me. So I commend therapy. I do. But one thing that I learned is that control that you mentioned, because I saw it and I did it. That was me. It was that fear-based. I don't want my children to be like this, or, oh my God, my son talked back to me. And then this fear of, is he going to grow back and be one of them compatible teens? Oh my God. And then I've noticed, it was scary, but I've noticed that once I started being a little bit more, I'm a little tough. I'm getting worked on. I just have to be honest. I got to be transparent. The more that I've given my son love, because I did not realize that I wasn't a hugger. I will hug, but I don't know what it was about my son. I would not hug him. And I saw that when my younger daughter was born, how he wasn't affectionate towards her. It was really weird. And so once I started giving my son more hugs, I started loving him and just letting, relinquishing the control, tongue-tied. Then I saw how his behavior was toward my daughter, his sister, and you nailed it. And even when it came to my parents, I had a conversation with my parents. I asked them one day, and I just told them straight up, I said, why did you all raise us this way? What was wrong with you? What happened? Because I went through that time. I didn't want to speak to them. I hated them. I could not stand them. I resented them. And when I opened up my mouth and had that hard conversation, which I was very fortunate to have, meaning some people were afraid, or I've heard stories where people have tried to express themselves to their parents. Their parents were so bullheaded they're like, I don't care, I didn't do anything wrong. And sometimes we just want that apology or that acknowledgement. But once I had learned the history of how my mother grew up and the history of my grandfather, and I said, my God, you're only doing what you learned. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to, my goal is to stop that trend. It's not even trend, that generational curse, as they say. And I remember talking to Tanya that I am literally growing with my son, because I didn't know who I was. And now, since I'm learning who I am, when I do something wrong, I'll tell my son, you know what, mommy was wrong. I do apologize. I do exactly what you meant, what you mentioned earlier. I let him know. I always ask him, well, how did that make you feel? To me, it may not be a big deal, but to him, how did it make you feel for that boy to push you like that? Mm-hmm. The old me would have been like, get over it. Woo. Even thinking about how it used to be makes me cringe. But now, how does that make you feel? And plus, right. I also learned that through not only being a teacher, but also a student of life, where you learn things through instructors, who are daycare workers, or also teachers. And I'm like, oh yeah, I never really, who thinks about that their child is a little human? I never really thought that my son and my daughter were little people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With emotions. And when someone brought that to my attention, I'm like, Anissa, they're little people. I'm like, you're right, they're little. And they have feelings too. Yeah. And that totally changed my mind. Like,
yeah. And it's really interesting that you're saying that, Anissa, because that is where boundaries are formed. Mm-hmm. In those early childhood experiences and interactions with the people that children want to be accepted by, mm-hmm. which is first their parents, second, other people that they look up to. And sometimes it's teachers. You obviously want, appropriate attention from teachers and to be liked or seen as somebody who's smart or can do it. And that's where they kind of develop their whole sense of self. Mm-hmm. And so when parents are my way or the highway, your opinion doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It kind of gets written into your code a little bit. And then, you know, your nervous system is learning through all of those experiences. And so the older you get, some people are really, when they have to, you know, like their whole body just feels like, I can't do this. Like the word just cannot come out of their mouth. And worse, if you have situations where in childhood, there's certain sexual violations, physical violations, where somebody's beating on you or abusing you, you absolutely learn in a way, it's not conscious, but in a way you're learning that people can take from you whatever they want. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And it's funny
so
how that pattern
coming back from that and learning. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's just kind of coming back from that, like walking that back up to having healthy boundaries is a whole process that requires a lot of support, you know, and sometimes in families, that's the last place that therapists kind of help you apply those boundaries, because those are the hardest relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the reasons you don't is because there's this huge fear of losing. If I say, don't do that to me anymore, I don't like it, and you decide not to, you know, you do it again, it means that you're not a safe person for me and I can't be around you. And that's a loss of a relationship. And that fear of losing is absolutely a barrier to learning how to say, no, I'm not okay with that, and willing to walk away.
And that's what keeps people stuck, you know, within their family dynamic, unhealthy ones, and relationships. It keeps them stuck, you know, that fear of, God, if I say no, this person is going to turn their back on me. If I say no, they're going to think I'm a mean person. If I say no, they're not going to like me anymore. But all the time that you're saying yes when you should be saying no, you're building resentment, you know, and at the end of the day, you're the one that's hurting internally, you know, and then probably someone who's really close to you, they get the brunt of that because they get frustrated with you. They put it out on you. It's like, hey, I'm not the one that you should be, you know, shooting these shots at. It's the person who's actually taking advantage of you. It's a person that can't accept your no's, you know, which is pretty tough at times. But I completely understand. It's those relationships you don't want to let go of. So you continue doing the people pleasing stuff, you know?
That's it. That is the people pleasing. Girl, I got the t-shirt. I burned all of that. So, like you said, when it came to family members, I remember being open to them, letting them know. I said, I was so busy trying to keep everyone together, and I tolerated how you treated me.
That's a good word.
And even when you come up to me and say, hey, listen, I apologize, I'm so sorry sometimes, and it took me a long time to heal, that people please are still there, like, oh, I apologize, and you have these expectations that, oh, okay, and but then I had to learn, even through therapy, that, Anissa, you did the right thing. You just have to let them go through their little battles. And I had to learn too that how someone feels about me is none of my business. Everything I apologize to someone is for me now. I used to go in with expectations. Now it's like, oh no, I'm owning up here.
Yeah.
On. I wish you the best of luck in your journey of your healing, you know. And then another thing, when I learned my boundaries, as I'm learning, you know, what my boundaries are, I also had to disconnect. And that's the hardest thing too. When you're like, I'm not going to reach out back to you. I realize that you've been doing this for the last 20 years. You may feel a certain way about me, but I've already given you so many invitations. You chose not to accept them. I realize that there is something that you have to deal with. And I love them dearly, you know, friends, but relatives dearly. But when it comes to my peace, especially since I worked so hard and spent so much time going to therapy, oh no, ma'am.
Yeah.
Bulldog on my own property, I will sniff you out. I can sniff the BS out. And even if you even come close, I will slam that door. I'm very protective, and especially with the last situation I came out of, when it comes to my children. My son had asked me, he said, Mommy, how come, I had to be honest with him, how come you and Daddy aren't together anymore? And I said, well, I've done some things. I didn't get the details. I said, but when people are hurting each other, we don't stay with people who hurt each other. So we separate. And I got into more details with my son because I wanted him to see that when you grow up and you have relationships with people, when they hurt you, you back away. You don't stay with them. And I've noticed that especially with me growing up, I may not understand, but even listening to other people's stories, they're like, well, I stayed with them because we were just taught that we don't leave them. You know, we don't divorce anyone that hurt us. We don't, I'm with my boyfriend because they never really had an example of when someone hurts you, you leave them. I mean, just as simple as it's just, to us looking outside, like, bro, you leave them. But we really don't know it's actually deeper than that. It's deeper than that. So I'm like, I'm also learning too with new friendships to be patient, to give grace with people because, you may be out of it. And it's easy for you to say, girl, let him go. But there's like layers. You find out. You're like, oh, okay, so that's what happened to you. And then that led to this and that led to this. So this is not going to be an overnight thing. Okay, girl, I got you, honey. Let's get the wine again. Well, come on.
But what you said there, Anissa, is really important, right? Because when we think about and when we're teaching people how to have boundaries in therapy, for instance, it is understanding where I end and you begin. Mm-hmm. So my feelings belong to me. I'm responsible for me. I cannot change other people. I can only change myself and how I respond to them. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that once we go through this process to understand where my boundaries are and how to notice when they're being, pushed on a little bit, it depends on the nature of the relationship, how important it is to us, whether we give people an opportunity to understand, listen, this is not okay for me and I really don't want to lose this relationship. But if you keep doing this, like, that's hurtful. Yeah. And I can't tolerate that. But the idea is when we first start doing it, it's like every other time in our life that somebody has broken a boundary comes like a Marvel movie from way back in the past, like boom, 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 yeah, and like slams you in your back. Yes. And you're like, oh, hell no. And this whole other person comes and it's like a lot of anger and argumentative and if you ever, and a lot of that. So we're feeling that something is happening we're not happy with, but we don't know what that is sometimes. And when you learn what that is, all that stuff that comes from the back, you can say, okay, hold on. I feel you.
Right.
And then you can, in love, say, in order to try and save this relationship, this is what I need to happen.
Right.
And if that can't happen, I fully understand your decision, but understand that based on your decision, my decision will be, that's a deal breaker. I can't do this anymore. I'm uncomfortable. I have to take care of me. So if you don't want to change, I need to move. Yeah. But that takes a whole lot of learning and self-reflection and healing and all of that to determine where that needs to be, how I need to say this, because the idea, though, spiritually, is that I can set boundaries in love with the intention to progress together in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And when you start practicing your no, you recognize too that you can hear other people's no a lot easier.
Yes.
After all I've done for you, you can't babysit my child tonight when I really need you. It's like, I have something going on. You asked me last minute. I still love you, boo, but I can't do it tonight. And it's like, oh my God, how could you? And it's like, no, your children are your responsibility. And if, somebody can bail you out, that's great. But if not, that doesn't mean they're not your friend. There's just so many different ways that this presents in our daily lives, like all over the place.
It's funny you should say that real quick. So I'd love to hear from Lady T. She's been a little quiet. But when you said that, I was in the shower getting ready for today's show and it clicked to me. I was like, people that are not able to receive no's, they probably struggle with having boundaries themselves. Because if they had boundaries, they would be able to respect, hey, there are people that I want to respect my boundaries. So if this is your boundary, I want to respect yours as well. So that just clicked into my head. Like people who have a problem with no's probably don't have their own boundary set, which is why it's hard for them to accept other people's boundaries and they get an attitude problem or they cuss you out or any number of things because they don't get what they want.
Or they get easily offended. Because I used to get offended, and you're absolutely right. Or when I didn't have any boundaries, it was I was just walking on eggshells. I was a people pleaser. I want everybody to like me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but go on, carry on.
Oh, yeah.
No, I can relate to everything that I'm hearing. And yeah, sorry, I was having some tech issues and kind of had to step away and come back. But I can relate to everything. And that's one of the common things I find once I started to display, you know, what my boundaries were, was everyone was like offended by it. Like, how could you? And it's like, okay, hold on a second. I matter too in all of this, and how I'm feeling is also valid, right? And I just find in those interactions, you're always supposed to be thinking about the other person, but it's like, who's thinking about me and how I'm feeling? And why can't I say, okay, this is where I'm going to have to just, you know, make the disconnect. And I've had to make, let's say, a few years ago, I had to disconnect from a friend. Same thing, just because I had boundaries that were constantly being stomped on, and I just had a final straw with it. And, you know, all of my friends around me were like, yeah, but you've been friends for so long, and this, that, and the third. And it's almost like you're supposed to not have a boundary because that's a longtime friend. And it's like, no, I love this friend, you know, I always will love that person, but I can love from a distance, and I can put myself first and say, I never want to experience anything that I had to experience in that moment for me to put my boundary in place and say, yeah, you know what, this relationship's just going to kind of have to go to the side. And very similar in a relationship that I had, after the relationship was done, it really hurt me, like deeply, more deeper than any relationship I'd ever been in. And I couldn't understand why I was taking it so hard, because I knew within the relationship, it probably wasn't going to be one of those long-term situations, but it hurt, and it hurt very deeply. And what I discovered as some time went on, and I kept questioning myself, like, why are you hurting so much? I was really upset with myself, because there were so many opportunities for me to put boundaries in place, and I never did.
Yeah.
And I just allowed things to happen on top of other things, on top of other things, and pretty much just sit there like that quiet child I was, like taking this back to like 6-year-old Tanis, who, like we've discussed, you can't talk back to your parents, you can't express yourself, things happen to you, and heaven forbid you open your mouth, then that's going to be another set of problems. So you stay quiet and you suffer in silence. Mm-hmm. And that was what I did in that situation. I suffered in silence, not knowing that I had the power to say, hold on a second, I can actually walk away from this and it's okay. Right. So having boundaries is so important. And the more I see them work for me, the more I implement more because it saves you a lot of anxiety. Like I had developed anxiety as a result of not having boundaries. That whole walking on eggshell type feeling, same thing. Went through depression, just a bunch of other things come into play that I would rather not experience. So yeah, having boundaries is so important.
Yeah, while we're on that, like, I would like to bring this to Krista, right? And, you know, anyone else that wants to put an input in, going back to boundaries, by not setting boundaries, what are the problems that we will face? What are some potential problems? Because maybe our audience could identify with some more specific things that if you don't set boundaries, this is kind of what it looks like. So they could actually say, wait a minute, realize for themselves, I didn't realize that I wasn't setting a boundary, and this is how I'm feeling. And this is a negative impact of how it's, you know, affected my life at this time.
Yeah. The biggest one really is the sort of constant reoccurring feeling that you're giving more than you want to give.
Wow.
You know, that anytime somebody asks something of you, there's this obligation to give them what they're asking for. And it's like, you know, as long as I ask nicely, you're supposed to say yes. And it's like, no, it's your job to ask nicely because that's the person you want to be. Mm-hmm. But I'm still free to say no if that's not okay for me today. And it may not be that what you're asking me for is something I don't want to do. It's like, I really want to go. Mm-hmm. I really want to assist you. I just can't today, you know, I have to respect the fact that you're not going to come away from this show today like setting boundaries left, right, and center, because you first have to, there is a process of discovering where you need those boundaries to be and how they've been broken in the past and where you need to work. And so that's one of the things I really want the audience to take away, is that this is the beginning of a journey. This is like a glimpse into the possibility of a sense of freedom in your life.
Yes.
To choose, to say, to refuse, and to be prepared for people to make the decisions they need to make for themselves.
Yes.
And then you figuring out how you're going to respond to that for yourself.
Yeah.
But not having them means that we're adding things to our lives sometimes that are not in our best interest. They block us from things that we want to achieve. They keep us running in everybody else's circle and not in our own. And the people pleasing aspect of it is really, a huge block too, because if I'm constantly doing for everyone else, then I can't do mine. I can't work on my project or something I have going on that's a dream of mine. And worse than that, not having a sense of healthy boundaries means that sometimes in relationships, people are taking energy from you that you don't want to give. And it wears you down. It makes you feel hopeless sometimes, like I can't seem to get ahead. I can't seem to focus on me. It's never okay. Yeah. And we keep looking for permission from other people because we don't know how to give ourselves the permission that we need to say, you know what, this isn't working for me.
Right.
The way I'm doing this is not working for me, and I need to change something. And I can do that because I'm in charge of me.
Right.
And so it's really hard sometimes, though. You can be in a situation. One of the first things I teach my clients is when you're starting to practice healthy boundaries, when someone asks you for something, you never answer. Get into a practice of never saying yes or no right away. Even if you think you know what the answer is, just say, you know what, I'm not really sure. Let me check on that and I'll get back to you. Hey, can I borrow $50? Let me check on that real quick. Let me check something and I'll get back to you. And sometimes all you need to check is, do I want to do this?
Right.
I don't think I want to do this.
Acting on impulse, because a lot of us
who's the person that's asking me? Or can you babysit my kids next week? It's like, I want to help you. I want to babysit your kids, but that's right after a 2-day conference. I'm gonna be tired. Like, I really don't want to do that. So sometimes you need that space to just kind of, does this work for me? How does this impact my stuff? How am I going to feel if I say yes to this? And do I really want to say no? And it gives you just that little space of time to check in, because we can't, until you get better at it, you got to give yourself a little time to kind of do that little self-analysis.
Yeah. So
not answering yes or no right away is a really good way to kind of start practicing just checking in with yourself before you answer.
That's a good one.
That's a great one. And, you said something really important about, you explained why you were saying no. And I used to do that a lot, even if that wasn't really the reason why I was saying no. And I just learned for myself, I just say, no, unfortunately, I'm unable to do that. Because I don't, why do I have to explain why I don't want to do something? I feel like that's a little bit of people pleasing too, in a sense. I have to provide this great reason so they understand why I'm saying no. Why can't my no just be my no? No, I'm unable to, sorry, I'm unable to.
And it can be. The difference though is the type of relationship. If it's a really close relationship, I offer an explanation that is honest and true, with the hopes that you understand where I'm coming from, and that this is not I don't want to. This is I really shouldn't. It's not in my best interest, and I have to do me first. But if the relationship is not as close to you, then it's quite okay to say, I'm so sorry, my schedule won't allow it, and not offer any further explanation. But if you find that you're justifying your no with lies and made up stories, more than likely you are hella uncomfortable saying no. That's a really good signal right there,
And Lady T has said something earlier when she said, when she was speaking on her best friend, and she said, oh my God, I felt so bad because we've been friends for a long time. And I've noticed that, that from my experience, when it comes to, we think that even when it comes to family members, oh, that's your uncle so-and-so, he's been coming around for 50 years, or, that's your family, that's your relatives. And people need to realize that I'm going to tell you what a therapist had told this lady at my job. When I was at my job, she said, girl, my therapist, because I'm joking around, let me slow down, because I'm getting so excited. So the girl said, her therapist had mentioned to her, made a statement and said, there's a difference between relatives and family. Man, that resonated in me for a long time. We know what a family is. We think that it's because it's our blood. No, I have a family, and I can count on less than 5 fingers. I didn't need a group of people to justify me or to validate me and to jump to the and so when Lady T had mentioned, like, oh my God, we've been together for so long, and people need to realize that even relationships, you grow. So you and her used to play hopscotch, but now you went, I don't play hopscotch no more, and she may still want to play hopscotch. So you're a little bit more mature than her. And either they don't, either they stay where they are mentally, they may be growing physically, but they may stay, they may be still immature mentally, and you're still growing, and we'll tend to, but we're friends, and I don't want to go, so I'm going to hold on to her. And to go back into like our family member, that's the same thing when it comes to our relatives. I'm going to I want to be your sister or your brother, but your brother is hurting you. Every time you come to him, he's dismissing you. Or when you come to him, he's talking down on you, but you tolerate it. When are you going to open up your mouth and say, you know what, listen, I love you, I still got some issues, but you're not going to talk to me any kind of way. And so that brings me forward to what you mentioned about, oh my goodness, I was talking so fast, I lost my train of thought. It was so...
That's okay.
Happens all the time.
But as you were saying, a part of what you're saying is what makes it difficult too. You hear the old saying, blood is thicker than water,
yes.
But it's family. Because it's family, you're supposed to excuse all ill behavior. And that's part of our conditioning and training as well. Well, that's just your mom. That's just how she is. Just your brother. That's that's how. And it's like going back to Krista, like, how do you manage and navigate that when, you're close relatives? I heard Lady T, she was like, when I said mother, right?
just relatives on a whole in some cases. Yeah, trust me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just responding to Tanya. It's what makes it interesting, and the part you kind of have to do your own work on before you kind of bring that to your family, is accepting people for who they are. But remember that accepting people doesn't mean that you let them in. So you can be in a space with somebody, like your mom, and if you know emotionally how to set boundary on yourself, because you can't put boundaries on other people.
Good point.
So I know that my mom has some issues. This is the way that she is. I love her dearly, but I don't let her in anymore emotionally. That thing that she does that used to affect me, I've learned how to put a boundary around that and keep that out. And I can still be in space with people because I've learned that that's not mine, that's hers.
Yes.
And I don't have to take responsibility for how she feels about me. Right. So you could not like me or not like something I'm doing all day, and I can still be in the same room with you because I full and well understand that I'm okay, that my decision is the best one for me, and you don't like that. And that's yours. I don't have to take responsibility for that. Right. But that is a whole nother level of boundary development and growth. Right. But accepting her for who she is, you can still do this. The whole point about learning boundaries is to be able to set them in love. It is not about cutting people off. It is not about, making your server so small that you can't go anywhere.
Right.
It is about freedom to choose.
Yeah.
And you can have what we call sometimes public acceptance, public compliance without private acceptance. So I can be at a family reunion and not like half of y'all, but I know inside that's a totally different thing. I'm here for whatever reasons I'm here for, and I'm there to honor that, or go to a funeral because I need to be there for so-and-so, but not deal if this is not the time to face. Right. It doesn't mean I'm okay with all of y'all. So it's kind of like you learn the difference between needing to say everything that you don't like or don't agree with, and just being able to kind of personally live there and not need anybody else to agree with you.
It's funny. I know the time is running out. There's this book Krista, of course, recommended to me. It's called Boundaries. I haven't finished it yet.
That's okay.
I'm going to. But in reading it, one of the things that gave me chills from time to time when I was reading the book was knowing how much power and freedom you have when you set boundaries, and the boundaries are focused on you.
Yeah.
And what's important for you. You know, so just going through the book, I was just like, wow, you realize how much power we give away to other people, you know, that weakens us, that gives us depression, anxiety, you know, mental stress and just, you know, anger, for any type of, you know, discomfort in our mental well-being. And it's most of the time, I would say probably all of the time, it's because we gave away our freedom. We gave the power to other people to piss us off. You know, we gave the power to other people to say whether or not I'm going to say yes or no, which oftentimes it's yes, 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 yes. And if anything that I would like for people to get from the show, you know, even starting off with the advice that Krista gave, is knowing that it's all about you. And it's okay. These boundaries are about protecting your spirit, protecting your soul, protecting your integrity, protecting your space. And in that space, you're loving yourself and the people that you allowed in, and the people that you wanted to stay outside. You know, that's just where they need to be, in love, as Krista says, in love.
In love.
But
absolutely.
You know, in my space, my, what would you call it? Lines, my barriers, my fence, you know, I can garden what I want to garden in my space. Am I going to choose to garden, you know, let people put their weeds in my yard? You know, and then you wonder, why is my roses, they're kind of like weeds are covering that all up.
They don't bloom, or they just don't bloom.
They suffocate.
They don't bloom.
They don't bloom. So that's what I love about learning. Because like I said, I have areas that I need to work on in this boundaries. And you're completely right, Krista. It's one of those things where you just have to take a step back, because it's shocking. You know, for me, it was shocking. Like, oh, wow, I wasn't setting boundaries. But like you said as well, and I spoke on other shows, you'd always know something is wrong if you examine how you're feeling. You know, tightness in your chest, in your stomach, headaches, you know, a few other things. You're like, okay, wait, my body's bugging out. You know, it's probably because we need to look inwards, and there's something that is not right. In some way, we're allowing other people or ourselves, and we could do it to ourselves too, right?
Absolutely.
You know, by not, you know, protecting our space. And it's not selfish at all.
I was about to say that it's not selfish, but so often we're told this, right? Like, you're being selfish. No, I'm actually not. It's very fun. There's a line that divides the two, and it's not selfish. And anytime I think we start talking about self-love, you know, some people would see that as being selfish. It's not. It's something we all need to do at some point in time in our lives. And I just want to take this moment, as you showed your book, which is a wonderful book, Boundaries. I have my own boundary book. I don't even think anybody can see it because of how it is. I'll hold it up to me. But it's Find Boundaries, Find Peace. And it's by Sinedra Glover Tawab. I love her. I follow her on Instagram. A lot of her content on there is about boundaries and how we set boundaries. I usually steal some of her content and put it in my Instagram stories, because I just love to share it, because it's such amazing content. And I think I think this whole topic is something not a lot of people really understand fully. And I just think it would be a wonderful world if everyone just had their boundaries that they put in place. It would, you know, I'm all about the perfect world. No such thing. I know, I get it. But still, it would just be wonderful if we can, you know, all operate in some sort of boundary for our own peace, because I think we all deserve to have peace in our lives. So anyway, that's me. We got 4 minutes.
Any last comments?
To say, it came to me, you know, I wanted to tell the audience that one thing that they need to know that is very important, the truth is the prerequisite. I don't know what's going on my tongue. Listen, you know, when you go to college, is that, you know, so you have to tell the truth before you take any course in life, to this self-love journey, or this finding out what your boundaries are journey, you have to recognize the truth. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to say, I don't like this, or you know what, I am frustrated. And then it starts going into, where did this come from? Why am I always angry when this happens? So it's a very uncomfortable journey, but I just wanted to let the audience know, like, it's not an overnight thing. You have to be honest with yourself. And that's probably the hardest part before, starting this walk.
Change happens, yeah.
100%.
And if I had any final comment to add to that, Anissa, is that, I highly recommend therapy, obviously, because having that outside view looking in is a different perspective, and you need that therapeutic alliance to kind of walk with you through that journey, because it is really difficult. And so a lot of people know where they want to be. They know how they want to feel, but they don't know how to do it. And so wanting to do something and figuring out how are two completely different steps and different journeys. And that's what therapists are there for, to assist you on that journey, to guide you in a personalized way.
Yes.
That is, wherever you come in that day, that's where we meet you. And you tell us where you want to go. And we're right there to help you kind of figure out, okay, what's next for you? And what's next? And what are you comfortable with now? And why is this uncomfortable for you? And let's work on that. The other thing is that the Boundaries book is by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And there's a whole series. So there's Boundaries. That's just, kind of a synopsis of everything. But then they go in specifically. So there's boundaries in marriage, boundaries in dating, boundaries with kids, boundaries with teenagers, because there's a slightly different language.
We're going to have to cut because we have another show, but we're definitely going to have to come back together, because I know we missed a few minutes in the beginning of the show. So thank you guys so much for coming and sharing your stories and your expertise in the area of boundaries. We'll definitely get you guys back on. Enjoy the rest of your day. Lady T, what's up next?
The Honey Drop with Lucia D is up next. Thank you, ladies, for coming on. We definitely need to have you guys back. We appreciate your time.